The laughter started before she even touched a piece. It echoed through the grand hall of the International Chess Invitational, space usually reserved for quiet strategy and hushed. But tonight, that reverence was broken by chuckles, smirks, and not-so-subtle whispers, because of one woman. Her name was Maryam. She wore a plain navy blouse, a long skirt that brushed her ankles, and no visible brand names or badges of prestige. She had no coach by her side, no fanfare, no entourage. Just a small canvas bag, a folded tournament pass, and calm, steady eyes. She looked like a spectator who had gotten lost on her way to the restroom, but she had signed up as a last-minute alternate. When one of the invited players had fallen ill, the tournament officials, perhaps out of amusement, had let her take the open spot. What harm could it do? They seated her at board 1. Across from her sat Victor Layton, 3-time world champion, hailed as one of the most aggressive and ruthless minds in modern chess. His hands were folded, his posture lazy, his smile smug. He did not bother to hide it. When he looked up and saw Maryam, he leaned back and laughed right in her face. "Are you here to take a picture or play?" he asked loudly, prompting more chuckles from those nearby. Maryam did not respond. She simply reached forward and adjusted the white knight slightly, straightening it. "I hope you know the rules," he added. "This is not checkers." The cameras flashed. Phones were already recording. Some expected a humiliation so epic it would go viral by morning. They thought this would be over in 15 moves, but Maryam did not blink. And when the clock started ticking, she made her first move not with hesitation, but with quiet precision. Pawn 2d4, and from that very moment, everything started to shift. The laughter quieted after her third move. It was not immediate tact first. The crowd still murmured and smiled, expecting her to make a blunder any moment now. But by move 3, the mood shifted. Victor's lazy smirk faltered. Maryam's opening was not clumsy or random, it was deliberate. The Queen's Gambit. Classical. Aggressive. Victor leaned forward. She did not look up. Her gaze remained fixed on the board, her fingers lightly touching the base of each piece as she calculated, patient and calm. She moved with rhythm, like someone who had played these lines 1,000 times before, like someone who was not here. By mistake, the commentators in the booth began to stir. "That was unexpected," one said. "That line waits, she is preparing for an isolated queen's pawn. That is not beginner territory. Who is she?" the other whispered, flipping through the player list. "There is no record of her. It's no FIDE rating. No title, nothing." By move 10, Victor was no longer smiling. He drummed his fingers against the table, eyes narrowing at the strange confidence across from him. He had been playing the Sicilian all week, catching opponents off guard. But she had lured him into a position he did not control, and she was gaining tempo. The crowd leaned in. There was something oddly graceful about Maryam's play. Her captures were swift but silent. Her attacks came like gentle waves, quiet, clean but powerful enough to shift the entire momentum of the board. "Maybe she memorized a few moves," someone whispered. But no, she was thinking. You could see it in the way she paused, just long enough to assess every variation, and then moved with certainty. By move 15, Victor frowned and leaned into the table. For the first time in years, he took more than 3 minutes to respond. And when he moved his knight, he tapped the clock harder than necessary. Maryam was unfazed. She countered with a bishop sacrifice that drew a collective gasp. The commentator's voice cracked over the headset. "That is bold." She calculated that correctly. Victor just walked into a trap. She sat still like a statue carved from patience and purpose. And for the first time in the tournament, the audience stopped seeing her as a joke and started realizing they might be watching something extraordinary unfold. By move 20, laughter had turned to tension. Maryam had traded pieces with surgical precision. Knights gone, rooks repositioned, pawns advanced like soldiers under perfect command. The crowd, which once whispered and chuckled behind her back, now sat in a kind of frozen disbelief. Victor's expression had changed completely. He was no longer leaning back with arrogance. He was hunched forward, brow furrowed, one hand pressed to his temple. He stared at the board as if seeing it for the first time, not because it was unfamiliar, because he could not believe what he had missed, had underestimated her. The position on the board was equal in material, but Maryam had control of the center. Her pawns sat like anchors. Her queen loomed with menace, and her dark square bishop cut across the board. Like a blade, the Grandmaster's breathing changed. He tapped his fingers. Then he stood and walked around the table, classic signs of stress. Among elite players, his team, watching from the sidelines, exchanged nervous glances. "How did we not prepare for this?" One of them whispered. "Who is she?" Miriam's background was a mystery to most. No tournament experience, no country affiliation, no formal ranking. She had registered last minute through an open slot, and the organizers had laughed when they saw her name on the bracket paired with Victor in round 1. They thought she would be a warm-up. They were wrong. Miriam shifted her rook across the board with quiet confidence, offering a subtle trap trick well hidden, buried under what appeared to be a safe trade. Victor did not see it. He moved. The trap snapped shut. The audience gasped. Victor stared at the board in horror, realizing that he had just lost a knight in his position. More than that, he had lost the initiative. He was now defending against a player he had mocked. The commentators' voices grew animated. "That was genius," one of them said. "That entire line. It had to be prepared. No one plays like this by accident. She's playing like a Grandmaster. But she is not even rated." Victor's jaw clenched. He was rattled, truly rattled. Pushed back from the board. Stood again, ran a hand through his hair. He could feel the room watching not as his audience anymore, but hers. And Miriam? She did not look up. She reached forward, calmly advanced her queen, and pressed the clock with the same poise she had shown since the very first move. She had come to win. Not to prove anything, not to get revenge, just to play. And now, the Grandmaster, once untouchable, was bleeding position with every second that passed. By move 34, the silence in the hall was suffocating. Everyone was leaning forward. Now, breaths held, eyes fixed on the board where the impossible was unfolding, one elegant move at a time. The commentators were no longer speaking. Even they could not find words for what they were witnessing. Miriam, a quiet woman in the plain cardigan and no Federation badge, slowly dismantling the Grandmaster's defense. And Victor knew it. His eyes darted across the board, desperate to find a saving move. But there was none. Every time he tried to build a wall, she broke it. Every time he created space, she filled it. It was not brute strength, it was artistry. It's precise, composed, merciless artistry. He made a move bishop to g5. A pause, then Miriam responded instantly. Queen 2 e6. Check. Gasps. The Grandmaster's king had to move. But no matter where he placed it, he would walk straight into another trap. The room knew it. So did he. He looked up. Finally, he looked at her. Miriam's face was calm, but her eyes were different now. Focused, not smug, not proud, just clear, like someone who had seen this position 1,000 times in her head. Like she belonged here not just today, but always. Victor pushed his king to the corner. Miriam followed. Knight 2 f7. Another check. It was death by pressure. The kind of slow suffocation that Grandmasters used on amateurs, not the other way around. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some people were embarrassed by how they had reacted when she first sat down. The whispered jokes, the skeptical stares, the assumptions. Others were now watching with awe, not just at her moves, but at the quiet fury with which she played, as if every insult had been turned into strategy. The clock ticked. Victor's time was running low now, and so was his position. He had one chance to escape checkmate, but doing so would cost him his queen. His queen, the same piece he had used to intimidate her early in the game. The same one he had swung around the board like a sword. Now he had to sacrifice it just to survive another few moves. And Miriam, she did not blink. She made the capture, took the queen, pressed the clock. It was over in everything but formality. The Grandmaster, the legend, was being outplayed by a woman the chess world had never heard of, and they were all watching history write itself. The room had grown so quiet that even the faint ticking of the wall clock felt intrusive. Victor stared at the board as if trying to wake from a bad dream. He was down to his final seconds, both on the clock and in the game. He looked like a man confronting the edge of something he had never expected. His lips pressed into a hard line, hands frozen above the board. Across from him, Miriam sat perfectly still, waiting, not gloating, not even smiling, just still. Her fingertips rested gently on the edge of the table, eyes fixed on the 64 squares between them. He made one last move, a desperate pawn push. It did nothing but delay the inevitable. Miriam responded with perfect clarity. Bishop 2 h6, and with that, the trap closed. Mate in 3. The audience realized it a beat before Victor did. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "It's over." But the words hung useless in the air. Miriam waited. She gave him the dignity of finishing the match himself, and finally, Victor sighed. A quiet, almost defeated sound. He reached forward and tipped his king. The room exploded, not in celebration, not in chaos, but in stunned, reverent applause. The kind that grows from disbelief, then turns into awe. People stood to their feet. Someone near the front murmured, "Did we just see that happen?" Others looked at each other in shared amazement. And then louder. Now the applause swelled. Victor extended a hand across the table, his eyes searching Maryam's face. "You played beautifully," he said, his voice hoarse with disbelief, and something else, respect. Maryam took his hand and nodded. "Thank you." That was all. But the weight of those two words settled over the crowd. Like a thunderclap. Journalists were already scrambling for questions, trying to push through to get a name. A backstory, anything, to explain how a quiet, unknown woman had just defeated a world-renowned Grandmaster in under an hour. But Maryam stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked away from the board, without drama. She was not here for fame. She was here because she had always belonged at that board even. When no one else believed it, Maryam stepped outside the tournament hall and into the soft light of early evening. The roar of applause still echoed faintly behind her, but she breathed deeply, letting it all go. She was not walking away from the moment, she was walking through it, carrying something far more valuable than a trophy, her own quiet vindication. A reporter finally caught up to her at the stairs. "Miss, please, just one question. How did you learn to play like that? Who trained you?" Maryam turned slowly, her gaze calm and unhurried. "My father," she said simply. "He taught me everything before he passed. We used to play in the kitchen after dinner on a second-hand board with mismatched pieces." The reporter blinked. "Wait, no formal coach? No federation experience?" Maryam shook her head. "Just love for the game and years of quiet practice." Behind her, the doors of the hall burst open again. Victor emerged, surrounded by admirers and colleagues. But his eyes sought out only one person. He found her on the steps and made his way over, this time without fanfare. "I meant what I said," he told her. "You are a true master." She smiled faintly. "I never needed to be famous. I only needed one game." He nodded, and to everyone's surprise added, "I would be honored to train with you. Learn from you if you'd allow it." Maryam hesitated, then extended her hand. Chess should be shared. That is how it survives. And with that, the woman they had all laughed at became a legend, not because she beat a Grandmaster, but because she changed what people believed was possible. Months later, the footage of her match went viral. Interviews, invitations, and endorsements followed, but Maryam kept her promise to herself. She opened a small chess academy in her late father's name, welcoming kids who had talent but no resources, and every day after the last student left, she sat quietly at the same board and practiced, not for competition, not for applause, but because, after all, the board had always been her home, and sometimes the most brilliant moves come from the most unexpected hands.